Hey everybody, and welcome back to another year of Griz Tracks videos here at the Mazzolini. I'm AJ Mazzolini, your beat writer for Griz Football.
And I'm Kyle Sample, a Mazzolini sports reporter.
And we're two and a half weeks so far into the fall camp for the Grizzlies, with the season approaching rapidly. And the big story so far has been the emergence of Brady Gustafson at quarterback. He's coming out of a quarterback battle that in the spring had way too many guys back there. And so far he's been the guy basically with the big brain.
Yeah, you saw it a lot in the last scrimmage, is how quick he made decisions and how well he made his reads through the defense, and just how he was able to march the offense far better than either of the other three quarterbacks that are battling for the 2 and the 3 spot.
Yeah, and the rest of the depth chart is still sort of open for interpretation as they're heading into their final closed scrimmage on Thursday. But Gustafson has pretty much shored up that number 1 spot, which has got to be really good for him and for Griz fans to know that they got a guy. There's not going to be any more talk at quarterback. He's going to be one for the season. The thing that has been a little bit of a struggle has been up front with the offensive line, and therefore the running game behind him has gotten nowhere to run, no tread.
Yeah, and it's just so difficult to watch that offensive line and figure out what the issues are with them, and if they're not adjusting to this new scheme, or if they're not a cohesive unit, which is kind of surprising because they have 3 guys back.
Yeah, and the guys on the outside, it seems like, have struggled the most. Your tackles, which John Schmang is coming back from missing all of last year, ineligibility-wise, and he has missed a little bit of time with injury as well, but the tackles are just getting beat hard by the defensive ends, which hopefully that means defensive ends are really good, and maybe it's not, but the O-line is bad. It's going to be a little hard to tell until we actually get them playing teams that aren't themselves.
Yeah, and that outside position is such a bad position for them to be not secure at, because they face James Cowser, they face the guy from Liberty, I forget his name, it's a very hard name to pronounce. But there's defensive ends that they're going to face throughout the season that are really going to cause problems for them, and if they can't shore up those 2 sides with a guy like Gustafson, that could create some serious problems.
Definitely, because he's not exactly the most mobile quarterback, and they also have some injuries on that offensive line, which is, I'm sure, made things even more difficult. It's tough to get settled when it's sort of been a revolving door of players.
Yeah, and you have, they've used 3 centers already. They've used Wire, who's obviously down with a knee injury, and then they had Luke, and then they had Sprunk also a little bit, but it seems like they're going with
Robert Luke,
yeah.
Yeah, Robert Luke has kind of been the number 1 coming up from the 2s after Wire's knee injury a little bit earlier in the spring. And on the defensive side, because of some of those issues that the offense has had, they're looking like superstars, which is really hard to tell, really, though, if they are going to be that good. We know, the Griz were one of the top defenses in the league last year. Are they still, or is the offense just slowly coming along?
Right, that's such a difficult thing to figure out during fall. You can never tell, because you're constantly seeing these guys go against each other, and that's all they're going against, and you can't really see it, and you don't know what's going on behind closed doors and what's being said about what they can do in scrimmages and what they can't do, how much they can show and how much they can't show. So it's so hard to assess that.
Yeah, the nice thing has been some emergence of some new guys on the defensive side. Your safety, Manu Rasmussen, has pretty much cemented himself into a starting position. And then they brought in some transfers. Markel Sanders in the spring at cornerback has been getting some play. And then Yeaman Sanders at safety. Looks like he's probably going to be their nickel guy because they had some strong corners returning as well. So the defensive secondary all of a sudden looking like a little bit more of a strength than the weakness it kind of was proposed to be in last year.
Yeah, and it allows them to do some really creative things, especially Yeaman's presence, because you can throw him in there as a nickel back, and you don't have to worry about losing serious run support because he's so big that he can basically slide in there and act like a linebacker and still have a lot of responsibilities in the run game. So it's really interesting what they can do with that defense.
Right, and both he and Nate Harris, one of their other starting cornerbacks, have taken some snaps at nickel, and they've even had some looks with either 2 or 4 or 5 linebackers, even it looked like a couple of times. So we'll be seeing a lot of different looks throughout the fall, and leading up to that first game, North Dakota State, going to be a big one on ESPN, August 29th. A lot of hype and a lot of excitement here in Missoula as we're looking forward to that game. That's still another week or so out, so we'll come back next week and we'll talk all about the Bison. And until then, thanks for tuning in to Griz Tracks.